The third one's pretty critical as well. We don't believe the consequences will be that bad. Now here's the way I want you to think about it. So this is all about the hurt. We don't think it will hurt that bad. In other words, it'd just be a little scrape, just a little cut, just a little bruise. What's the big deal? It's just not that big an issue. And so with that, we're willing to take more chances. Now, there was a study done back years ago. Now, and this goes back to World War II type study. But this guy named McCurdy, he discovered something that surprised the whole nation. So back in World War II, when they were in England, when they were preparing for the invasion or for Germany to attack England, they thought, the whole country was going to really just sort of, they were worried that people would have a nervous breakdown when the Germans started bombing, places like London. And so they started developing and building places outside the city for people to be able to handle that stress. But they discovered a couple things that were a little bit different. They discovered there were 3 types of people in this situation. Okay, now get this. You can probably visualize how this happens in a workplace to some degree. There were the people that suffered, in other words, the people that suffered with their life when they would come in and bomb the city. There were the people that were the near miss. In other words, it happened, a mile away, half a mile away. They heard it, they saw the smoke, they heard the noise, but what did not affect them personally. That was a different group of people, and they responded differently. And then there was the remote miss group, where they heard it in the distance. They heard about it, but it did not affect them personally. Now that's important because when you look at what that meant, the people that were impacted, there were over 40,000 killed, there were over 46,000 injured, and 2%, but that was only 2% of the population. I think there were 8 million people in the city. Okay, but you would think if somebody's bombing your city, people would be running scared everywhere. But they said during the midst of all this, you'd see grandmas out taking their kids to the grocery store and hear bombs in the background. Now that's very odd to me. But in reality, what happened is people began to adjust. They began to adapt to it. And so there were the people that were impacted personally, fatally, injured. And those had a reaction that scared them, traumatized them. But the next part probably was the more trauma side. They saw it happen. They didn't get injured, but they saw it happen next to them. And so that kind of person, they saw the carnage, but they survived. Now here's the scary part. It's the people that were invincible, that the remote miss group that I worry about, because they know about it, they know the risk. They hear it, they see it, they smell it, they understand what's going on, but because they didn't see it, because it wasn't them, guess what? It's not going to happen to them. So they become invincible in that process. And that's a scary thing to consider because in a work environment, that happens every day because we don't understand, we don't consider or ask what if when it comes to the consequences. And so I don't want us all to live in this traumatized zone where we're scared of everything. But we have to live and work in a very conscious zone that this can happen. We can't be invincible to things. So if you've got projects in different locations with similar risk and somebody gets hurt, it's important for us to acknowledge that can happen to us too. I think that's a part of the what-if type mentality, understanding that the work that we're doing today, if we've seen people get hurt in the past, guess what? We're not invincible. It can happen today. So that what-if mentality takes the idea that consequences, we are not protected from them just because it hadn't happened recently. We're not protected from them just because we didn't see it ourselves or hear it ourselves. We have to be very consistently focused on the fact that the risk is risk and it can come back to bite us. And so that's the whole consequences type process. So we gotta make sure that in a sense we are very focused on the actual risk that could occur. When you go from job to job, it's helpful to be able to understand throughout the scope of that job from start to finish. You know certain things you're at more risk. And so being able to talk about it, be able to share those experiences so that people don't feel invincible. Does that make sense? Yeah, so don't be the ones that are invincible, but make sure that you are focused in on the right things.